thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And guess what? Oh, shut the front door. We have got, are you ready? Take a seat, people. Are you ready to absolutely rip the roof off? We have the amazing... The crowd goes wild. Yes, again, here on Up for a Chat. Look out. We've got the amazing Trevor Hendy on the show today. Now, if you haven't heard of Trevor Hendy, you've been hiding underneath a rock. So we are so excited to welcome this absolute phenomena of a human being who has transformed his life. He is obviously going to share his story with us and his background, and that's why we've got him on the show with us today. But one of the things that I'm super, super excited about, and we are definitely going to tell you guys more about this at the end of the show, but Trevor has got a spectacularly transformational program called Boot Camp for the Soul. So we're going to talk to you guys about how you can access that program at the end of this show, because I know that there are going to be some of you that are going to think to yourselves, I know this is what I need right now. We were just talking to Trevor before we hit the go button, and Kimmy and Cindy were both saying at the same time, you know, that just sounds exactly what we need. And, you know, it's so bizarre. And I'm so going to hand over to you in a sec, Trev. I'm just so excited you're on the phone. You're on the call, the show, whatever this is.
I'm blown away by the intro for starters, but it's fantastic. I'm stoked to be here.
Oh, that's just awesome. It's just awesome. We've got so many questions for you and so much that we'd like to know about you and what's brought you to this part of your journey. And I think that there's a whole awakening that you're a part of, especially for our men too. You know, I think it's wonderful to see so many macho men that are kind of leading a bit of a charge to show men that, hey, you know, we can all kind of dive deep and dirty into the soul and dive deep and dirty into ourselves and discover that there's a whole other self inside of there that's been begging to be noticed and be paid attention to. So I'm so grateful and so glad that you do the work that you do. I think you're an absolute legend.
Oh, thanks, Karen. Thank you. No, I'm really looking forward to these questions. Where are we going to go today? I'm really looking forward to it.
Be very afraid.
And look, I have to say, I'm with three beautiful ladies for this conversation, aren't I? Like, I've had a little bit to do with everyone at some stage, and just stoked that the four of us are together in one conversation. This is really exciting. Very beautiful.
Trevor, can you start by telling us all how beautiful we are? Sorry, I mean where you all started.
Can you just say that? Can you tell us how beautiful we are?
Oh, sorry, I just loved hearing it. Sorry, it was just music to my ears. No, seriously, tell us how, for the people that may have, in Karen's words, been living under a rock, give us a brief insight to how your world began for you and how you became a superstar within Australia and how it's led to where you are today.
Thanks, Kim. Good question. Born in Melbourne, 1968, so I'm approaching my 50th birthday next month, August. So I actually grew up 3 years of age. My dad decided that he wanted to travel around Australia. He had the ideal job, he had the ideal family, the picket fence, he had the existence that everybody said that he should have and he should be happy with. And he was at the top of the pile and felt like something major was missing. So the way that manifested for him was coming home and saying to my mum, Bev, all right, I think we should pack up, put everything in storage and travel around Australia for a couple of years and, you know, work out whether this is the right place for us or whether we should be somewhere else. So my father created this incredible pathway for me because the first thing he did before I was 5 years old, he had the courage to walk away from everything and actually take the family, my 5-year-old sister, Di, myself, mum and dad, take us around Australia for a couple of years, working, living place to place, just having these incredible experiences. And one of the things he used to do was we'd be in a caravan driving around, and he'd stop on the side of the road, and Mum would maybe be cooking a bit of fish or rabbit, who knows, 1971, and Dad would take us, Di and I, for a walk off into the bush, and he'd walk us and change direction 100 times, and then all of a sudden he'd say, all right, point to which way the caravan is or which way is home. And we'd have to point to which way is home and then lead ourselves all the way back. So he used to get us lost and then get us to help find our way again. And I'm not sure if you're picking up straight away on the symbolism of all that, but I've been blown away in my life that I suppose from a neuroscience perspective, that pathway was opened up in my mind, because the amount of times that I've got myself lost or gone a bit off track or taken too many turns one way or the other, but I've always been able to find my way back. And it's manifested in living, as you said before, a conscious life now. Because, I came home, ended up settling on the Gold Coast when I was 5 years old. 8 years old, went into the Nippers, the Junior Surf Lifesaving Movement, cried my first day, scared of competition, scared of people, everything else. Slowly but surely got used to that, hung in there at about 15 years of age, having never won anything in my life, in tennis match, a swimming race, a running race, anything, always pretty good at things, but could never really win anything. And a coach, a world champion coach, came to our surf club, and he basically set out a program for us and talked to us about goal setting and everything else. And after being kind of, I suppose, bullied a lot or feeling very small and insignificant and like everyone else is in charge, and I'm 15 and Mum and Dad rule the roost at home, and they were really good parents, very, very good parents. But then I'm at the club trying to find my way, and, the guy that was the best looking with the best abs and seemed to be the funniest, he seemed to call all the shots, and he also happened to be the Australian champion. So I put two and two together in the back of my subconscious mind and came up with the winner gets everything. The winner gets the girl, the winner gets the laughs, the winner gets the power and the respect and everything else. And I proceeded from 16 years of age to probably 26 years of age to pursue winning at all costs, because I figured that's how you get everything. And at that, throughout that 10 years, I ended up winning more World Ironman Championships and Australian Ironman Championships and Uncle Toby's series races than anybody had done before, and shot to fame and stuff in Australia here, and, met Madonna and went on Baywatch and met Michael Jackson and did all sorts of crazy things that you do when you're shunted into that sort of stratosphere, only to realise that at about 26 years of age, and I think of the song Rocky Mountain High by John Denver. He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found a key to every door. And I literally went through a major awakening at 26 in my 27th year, met a crazy chiropractor, who was all about emotion and nutrition and all these things I hadn't thought about other than just training hard, positive mental attitude, but all this other emotional stuff and, dare I say it, spiritual stuff. And I literally turned everything around working with him and a couple of other people, and the next year broke all the records that I'd previously broken, had my best year ever, trained less, felt more fulfilled, started restoring love in the relationships that were failing around me. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And how come I'd been to the best physiotherapists and the best psychologists and the best doctors and all these people, and none of them could fix all that. And one little group of crazy, quirky people could help me fix it in a few meetings and a few little, seminars where I cried a lot and opened up and admitted the truth of a few things, So I literally, what I did was at the end of that sporting career, not right when I finished, but just before I went through that awakening, I realized that I had a hole in me that was as big as it was when I was 15. And that was, I still felt small. I still felt insecure. All I'd done was covered it up with a false pretense that I was killing it and I was winning in life and I was better than everybody else. And when I scratched open that little, that sore and started healing that, I went through a crazy experience of everything that wasn't going right in my life just began to go right without me even trying to fix it. It was like I got myself right. And everything else came right after it. So ever since that, I've been just absolutely enamored, just in love with human potential and what we're capable of. What is a human being really? Who are we? Where is our real existence lie? And how could I change those things so quickly after struggling for so many years just with a couple of little awareness changes? And it sort of led me to the last 20 years of studying the human potential, working as a counsellor, as a facilitator, one-on-one. I've done somewhere up around 10,000 hours of one-on-one work with people now, and people all around the world, and a lot of facilitation of seminars and everything else, and written my own program, realising that life is one giant boot camp for the soul. And have an incredible relationship with my ex-partner that I grew up with and broke up with through this whole phase, and a beautiful marriage with my wife Jo, and we have 4 kids, 2 with each relationship, and we're all just wonderful friends and a big extended family, and very much on a journey together. And in many ways, just living an incredible life now, but based on staying conscious.
Wow.
How's that for a summary?
Yeah. Unbelievable. I just want to just tell me what you said when you said about John Denver. What was the song? I love John Denver, and I don't think I heard those words. So can you repeat those words again?
For sure. It's the work that I did many years ago. It doesn't exist anymore now, but it was very similar work apparently to what he did. So he went into Colorado and went from a sort of a country singer to more of a folk singer when he went through these self-awareness journeys. But the song is Rocky Mountain High, and it starts off with he was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found a key to every door. And it was like, goes on. When he first came to the mountains, his life was far away, something like hanging by a song. So it's literally a story about awakening. And it's amazing how many people I've worked with that have woken up at 26 years of age. It's like some sort of a symbolic moment. We're either going to wake up then or we're going to wake up later. You either get off that bus and onto a different one at that age, or you do it a few years, 7 years later or something like that. I'm not sure. But when I first heard his music years later, there's so many incredible songs that he wrote. I was like, wow, this guy just felt like he was singing to me. And then I later learned that he'd done very similar work. So.
That's just fascinating. I had the opportunity when I was living in Colorado to go to Windstar, which was his ranch that he bought. This was the 80s, by the way. It was a ranch that he'd bought that was the shape of a whale, and he was showing people how to grow food at a very high altitude all year round.
Wow.
Yeah, and he had this huge tent, like it was a huge tent, and he would sing on his farm in this tent. So, yeah, and so when you said this, he was an absolute idol of mine. I just loved him. But you know what? I've never listened to his lyrics, so thank you. I'm going to go back and listen to them.
There's some beautiful songs there, absolutely.
What was the work that you did? Like, you were physically fit, obviously. You were healthy. What work did you do that transformed you at that age?
Well, the first thing I did was worked with a chiropractor, Keith Maitland, down on the coast here, who I loved what he did from the sense of he was not scared to challenge me about the emotional stuff and the spiritual stuff. And the very first day we ever had a session together, he didn't actually touch my body, and he literally lined me up and had a look at me, and he said, your body's telling me that you won't win another world title, and it's just sort out a couple of things, a couple of priorities. It seems that you're pretty toxic. You probably got a dairy allergy or maybe some wheat or some other things, so you're going to have to bring some stuff back to me tomorrow to test you. And secondly, I think you've got some emotional issues. There's some suppressed anger that you're sitting on. And I remember he told me that, and I was like 3 times world Ironman champion at this stage, and I'd just been sent to fix my hip and my foot and my shoulder, and he said that to me, and I remember thinking, suppressed anger? Who does this guy think he is? Angry? I'm not angry, and then a little mental note to myself like, oh my goodness, hang on, I think I want to kill this guy, where did that come from all of a sudden? So, literally he didn't touch me, but I drove away. So agreed to come back the next day, quite intrigued by this thing that he was talking about, but also secondly, wanting to come back and prove him wrong, So I drove away, and I got a couple of kilometres away, And all of a sudden I noticed that my shoulder, my hip, my foot, nothing was aching. And it had been aching for 10 years, all this stuff. I was constantly icing, anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, everything, and nothing was aching. And I literally went, hang on a second, but he didn't do anything to me. And there was a really loud, clear, succinct voice in my head that said, that somewhere in my ether that said, he told you the truth. And I went, wow. And I could not believe how good I felt, and he hadn't even touched me yet. And I turned everything around from that year onwards. I started confronting my own stuff and having a look at some of my own patterns of suppressing emotion and, I probably was quite passive-aggressive really without realising it at the time, but burying a lot of stuff and then coming out in unhealthy ways. So that started it. I ultimately went on and did a stack of different things, but one that really hit home for me was an organisation called Human Potentials that went through all sorts of stuff many years later, but absolutely saved my life. Like, blew me away, the people I worked with there. And they were just people on a journey, same thing, understanding these things and helping with the awareness. And that doesn't exist anymore. It's long since gone. And the gentleman that I worked with there passed away in the late 90s, but had some wonderful, amazing time with him. But that was kind of the rocket ship that really sent me on my way. I think we discussed before we even started today that I did some, went along and did Anthony Robbins, went to Dan Millman and had an incredible story with him. I watched him in a seminar one day and thought I'd ask him a question the next day. I thought I'd ask him a question after the seminar, and the line was so long, I went, bugger, it doesn't matter. And as I was driving home, I got the invite from a friend to say that she had tickets to Anthony Robbins in Sydney the next day. And I literally drove away going, all right, well, I'll fly down for that. So it was Dan Millman one day, and then a day and a bit later, or maybe the next night, I was in Anthony Robbins. But I actually was standing waiting for my luggage to come off in Sydney the next day. And I was standing there thinking, gee, I really wish I got a chance to ask Dan Millman that question I wanted to ask him. And my bag went past me, and I went, oh, and I nudged over, and this guy reached across me, and we banged into each other, crossed arms, and stood up, and I went, oh, Dan. And Dan Millman was on the same flight, and I didn't even see, getting his bag off right next to mine. I went, oh, and long story short was I said to him, mate, I come to see you to, ask a question. So the line was too long, and, he said, well, fire away. Clearly the universe wants your question answered, and I introduced myself and everything. And the question I asked him was, can you see, you see auras or whatever, can you see someone's purpose, what they're meant to do? And he said, what you're really asking me is what's your purpose? And and he goes, it's interesting because I don't see it more, I feel. And he said, when I feel your purpose, I feel like you have a good job to do. And he goes, I don't know who you are, but this was totally meant to be, and everything else. He said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm here to see Anthony Robbins. And he said, he goes, oh, Anthony, he's a great mate of mine. Say hi to him for me. And so we literally had 3,000 people in that room. But the long story short was that I met him later that night. When I walked up to him, he said, hello, Trevor, nice to meet you. And I said, hello, Anthony, by the way, Dan says hi. So just these beautiful people that were totally out of my realm. I was an athlete, and they were all spiritual and consciousness teachers and success psychology teachers and everything else. And I met them, and I resonated more with them than all of the other coaches and people that I'd been around. And I knew from that moment on that my purpose was more to do with consciousness than it was with winning.
Trevor, can you tell me, from a perspective of a man, that as you mentioned about maybe having suppressed anger, you mentioned about not being awakened, and you mentioned that it was around 26, 27 that this occurred. Is this, in your opinion, every man's journey or every person's journey, as in that we all have issues or things that we need to work on? And if so, why? And when we do understand what they are, is there a purpose to those moments or those feelings or those expressions? Because it seems to be that it's through those troubled times or those challenging times that we seem to have the most ability to expand our hearts and minds to actually receiving the information. Why is it men don't seem to, and I'm speaking very generally, why is it men don't seem to get this? I mean, you're talking in a way that not many men talk.
Thanks, Kim. So true, right? Okay, multiple parts to that question, right? I love what Eckhart Tolle says, which is you can change anything, but first there must be an inner readiness. That definitely a lot of our greatest awakenings have come through suffering. So when we are not getting what we want, or we're not getting what we desire, what fulfills us, or in fact we get the opposite. We get disaster and we get tragedy and we get breakup and we get heartbreak. I think for a period of time, those things often lead us to go more unconscious, that we make another negative decision. Like, okay, well, I trusted this person. So clearly if you trust someone, you get hurt. So our subconscious mind makes another little booby trap for us. So now we don't trust anyone, or we don't open up. I loved, or I was vulnerable, or I tried too hard. So our subconscious mind is always trying to add to itself and give us another reason to become dark, to become negative, to become reactive, even revengeful. So it's like that black wolf, white wolf story, that the Cherokee grandfather says to his grandson, inside of every one of us is a black wolf and a white wolf. And these, black wolf is anger, fear, jealousy, revenge, etc. And the white wolf is love, understanding, proactivity. There's a whole lot of words, obviously, that we can use for that, but clarity. And that these two wolves are in a fight to the death inside of us, that only one wolf can win the fight, and each man or woman's life is defined by which wolf wins the fight. To which the grandson wisely asks, how do you know which wolf is going to win the fight? And the granddad says, whichever one you feed. So I think what happens is via unconsciousness, and certainly society's unconsciousness. So if we grow up in an environment where we don't talk about our feelings, if it is all about being tough, or it is all about proving a point or winning or acquiring material wealth or gain, what happens is we're very much entrained by that culture, that community, that society, that paradigm that we're growing up in, or family paradigm, or whatever it may be. We're entrained by that to only respond in those ways. So we literally, we may suppress our feelings, or we may, rather than go towards the pain and process it, which is, that fight or flight thing, rather than go towards the pain and process it, we try and solve it with a new decision, or a new set of goals, or I just won't love anymore, or whatever it is. So we're constantly building subconsciously this other version of ourself, which is that black wolf version. It's our shadow. It's the opposite to everything we truly are. It's untrusting, whereas beings, we're actually very trusting. It's closed and reactive, and almost it's constantly thinking about ways to get ahead, whereas beings, we're open and we let everybody else in, and we work with people and all this sort of stuff. So this introversion of who we are is trying to grow inside of us all the time, that shadow self. So I think ultimately, from all the people that I've worked with, is that people will continue along that vein until something comes along to disrupt that programming. Now, it might be that they have a tragedy and then they go, enough is enough. And they immediately, without even knowing it, they ask the universe, they ask God, they ask anyone who's listening, please help me. They send out the signal that they want change. And then messages start turning up in the ways of little articles pop up in front of them, or a teacher bumps, someone is a little bit. A spiritual teacher could be the lady packing the milk shelves down the road who says something wise, or just says, oh, well, it's a good day, isn't it? If you can just breathe and enjoy it, like slowly but surely, when you ask and when you're ready, the messages start coming to you. So I do believe that we are conscious co-creators of our own world, our own reality. And what happens is, we are co-creators of our own reality. But what happens is, for most people, and in most cases, particularly in our Western world, we're still unconscious co-creators. So if we're proactive and decisive and relatively positive, we're co-creating a pretty decent existence, but probably not really conscious that we're doing it. If we're negative and got in a spiral and we've got hurt a few times and damaged, and that little pain body inside is built up, and we've made a couple of decisions to shut ourselves off, then we're still co-creating our existence or our experience in life, because we come across more situations where the same thing happens and more people not to trust, and the same stuff just keeps manifesting, and we're still unconscious to it. So I think there's a difference between negativity and positivity and consciousness. So I do believe it's different for every person, but there's a certain point in time for most people that they awaken from something. And I say most people because a lot of people don't come across anybody who has these conversations or don't get exposed to something that disrupts that programming. And they may eventually go to the grave without ever having a thought of being able to change it. And we see at the moment just an absolute raft of suicides and depression and anxiety and self-medication and self-harm. And, I'm part of an organisation in Australia here called Life Changer. It's the Life Changer Foundation, and where our target is over the next 20 years to create a societal shift where we help our kids between 10 and 15 years of age via workshops and a digital platform, and via awakening the community they're in to create more mentors within the community. Over a 20-year period, we want to create a generation of kids that grow into adults that are more conscious of all these things. And we're only 18 months from the idea to launching publicly Friday a week ago. But it's quite fascinating because we're literally going, okay, we want to get to these people before all this stuff happens, before they go down a path of darkness and everything else. And the statistics for youth is absolutely horrendous, and they're just a bit of a window into the adults of the future. So there's a significant problem in the world, and that I say is a consciousness problem. That's just my viewpoint, but I think it's because we're not aware, we're not conscious, we're not slowing down, we're not with each other, we're not attending to each other energetically, emotionally, sensitively, spiritually. It's all dog eat dog and win at all costs. So absolutely, it's out there. Absolutely, people can change. And anyone who's listening to this is clearly part of that change because we come across the information that we're ready for.
I was having a conversation today with a client of mine about the rates of suicide. And there was even just another article that I read yesterday. And our highest rates of suicide are still in our elderly. But the statistics in terms of people worldwide, they were saying that 25% of the population is on a medication for depression or mental illness or anxiety, which means a quarter of the world is not functioning on all fours when it comes to, because they're medicating themselves to keep them, in a state where they can function. And that's the reported numbers. So if we would even say double that, it would almost say that 50% of us are out of our minds. And, it's strange because it's almost as if, and I'm really agreeing with you here, Trevor, it's almost as if the pain and the suffering on a planetary basis has escalated. And or maybe it's always been that way, but there are far more of us that are far more aware. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly. I believe that it's a consciousness problem and a self-awareness problem, because to experience depression or anxiety, there's an aspect of not knowing the self and not understanding the self to the extent of its power and its ability to self-regulate and its ability to bring us back to a sense of oneness where, and this was the conversation I was having with my girlfriend, getting back to what I originally said, was that because we feel, our eyes tell us that we're separated, we feel so alone in our thought processes, and we feel that nobody else thinks the way that we do. And to go from zero to suicide in a heartbeat, for a lot of people is an easy neurological pathway because they've kind of run that pattern so many times. But if we were to be conscious, and it's not even woohoo, it's science, we know this sort of stuff. Science would say that there's no delineation in energy between you, me, the kitchen bench, and the lounge chair. There's just a different frequency of vibration.
Yes, yeah.
But in fact, we're not separate. We're all one. And any thought of suicide or any thought of anxiety, it may not even be our thought. It may actually be a thought generated through collective consciousness, yet we're carrying it around as if it's ours. And then, of course, when you don't understand it, and I think a lot of our men, they almost don't have language for the way that they feel, much less, they can't explain it to themselves, much less to be able to explain it to anybody else. And I think that's why I so respect the stand that you're taking, not just for men, but, as an example for men, that through consciousness, through awakening, through understanding and self-awareness, we can transform our own lives, transcend the pain and the suffering, and then be a powerful example for our families and our children and our kids who, I don't know, I look at our kids and I see the statistics and I cringe for them because they don't want to be here, and it worries me. So,
Totally. What powerful words, Karen. This is the point in the conversation where, even before what you said, from off the back of what Kim asked as well, is this is the point where sadness rises for me, because I do very much feel connected to the whole planet, and I feel very much that whatever's happening on our planetary consciousness shift at the moment, it's certainly happening inside of, it's happening for every one of us, but it's definitely happening inside of those that have got a job to do something about it. And so as the sadness rises, and Kim asked before, is there a purpose to it all? And I believe, from my own experience, and I'm 100% sure, that the purpose of the negative is to arise the consciousness, that from that sadness, I feel motivated to discover what I can do about it. So the purpose of the sadness is to connect me with my purpose, and I feel that I begin to wake up. Whenever I have these conversations, I wake up more and more and more. And even as we talk now, more recently I've had a lot of access to, I don't know, it's other realms or other communication. I'm picking up on communication all the time. I feel people talking to me all the time. My past spiritual teacher who's passed away, I feel him influencing and connecting in with me, and saying, keep going, Trev, and so, and just before he passed away, he told me he was going to pass away and said, it'll be working just the same. I'll be working from the other side, Now, for some people that would sound crazy. For others, they're like, of course, that's normal. Some people are just opening to that idea. But we are connected with all things, past and present, future, all things, everything is light, is source. Basically, I love Eckhart Tolle's thing that our primary purpose is to know ourselves as source. Our secondary purpose, and that's not tomato sauce, obviously, that's the source of all things. And our secondary purpose is to do something with that. So I feel like this horrible stuff that we're going through, if anything, it's propelling me more in my own personal life to talk about it more and connect with it more and make sure that this is where we go all the time. So, as a man, it's not really that I'm speaking about it as a man. That's what's happening. But I'm actually speaking about it as a being who's awakening. I'm actually just waking up going, I have to talk about this, because these are my happiest conversations. When we're sharing these conversations, this is when it's a truly unique chance for us to talk about it unedited and send it out to anyone who wants to listen. This is so beautiful, such a beautiful opportunity, where the rest of the time in life, I can't walk down the street talking about this. I can pick up conversations all along the way, but the rest of your life, you're still dealing with the ins and outs and the details of your life. But every now and then you get an opportunity to connect, and the opposite to disconnection is connection, and when people are feeling disconnected, it's because literally no one understands them. And I think about that young child that's alone, or the adult, or anybody that feels alone, and they think that they're alone because they look like they're alone. But the moment they can say to somebody, I'm alone, as soon as somebody hears that, because they can actually say that and someone goes, oh, don't be silly, and they still feel alone. But when someone says, I understand, or I hear you, or I'm with you, it's just a vibrational shift happens, and the person goes, oh, thank goodness. And the amount of people that have later come back and told me that I saved their life because they came through the door, I was the last person they saw after seeing this person and that person, and they've done a session with me, and they later come back and say, you don't realise I was ready to kill myself, or whatever it was. And in that conversation, I knew that there was darkness there, but I just say, hey, yeah, it's good you can change anything, and I'm here listening to you. And just listening and understanding and acknowledging somebody can change everything, because all of the really important stuff is happening on the level, not that we can see, smell, or hear, but on the level that we can hear spiritually, that there's a pin drop in our, in someone else's universe, and we hear it. So when we stand for other people and we have these conversations, we literally, by understanding whatever negative is manifesting with each of us, when someone understands it, it not only it transmutes. The energy transmutes. It's like literally a duplication of that energy in the understanding, and it transmutes. And it's like where there wasn't love, there is now love, just by one person listening. So it's quite fascinating that it's happening worldwide, and there's this massive consciousness shift going on, and there's more darkness than there's ever been, or as you say, maybe we're just noticing it more. Maybe it's coming out like the boil being squeezed. We're seeing it more and more, and there's just such massive polarities going side to side about left and right and good and bad and everything else. But there's something about the fact that it's waking us up. And the funny thing is, even though it's a massive problem, the change comes from just listening to one other person. And before you listen to one other person, you might have to listen to yourself for a little while. You might have to be there for yourself first and get someone to listen to you. To get a little bit of space around you, so then you can be there and pass it on and listen to somebody else. And that's how it's actually going to change.
I love how you said that, it's from the darkness that, and I'm just kind of putting it in my own words, but it was, from that darkness, it's an invitation to find the light. And from the shadow, it's an invitation for us to sort of step out. And I think that if we can begin to see that our negative stuff and the stuff that brings us down and spits us out of alignment, if we can begin to see that that's necessary so that we would discover what the direct opposite of that was. It's not so that we can experience the sadness and the devastation of life, but we can see the devastation and go, okay, I get it. Now, why is it there? Like, what's its purpose? Which, I think a lot of people are trying to render the ego or trying to destroy the ego in the spiritual realms, some of the more conscious realms. But I honestly don't think that we can do that. It's kind of like trying to cut off your hand. I think it's a part of who we are. It's not all that we are. But when we find ourselves enveloped in the darkness of it, if we can say, okay, well, what's the light? What's the direct opposite of this feeling? And let me reach for that, because that's where my greatest expansion is going to come from. What does that look like? And it turns your face into a completely different direction and opens up a whole new set of questions, don't you think?
Oh my goodness! You're just firing me off here. Like my probably my my secret biggest passion, which is going to sound funny, but is the enabling, the empowering of the sacred feminine. I believe that is where the change is going to come on the whole planet, both within our women and within our men. So another simpler way of saying it is the yin quality of the yin and yang. That those two parts of consciousness. Which is not really two parts when you get into it, but what we're going through. But the sacred feminine is literally the part of us that actually feels and experiences everything fully, feels it, embodies it, and knows it. We don't see it off in the future, and we don't make decisions. The sacred feminine is the part of us that it's like circular. It's not straight lines. It's circular. It gives hugs. It holds everybody together. It's the heart. It's the part that actually leads to true consciousness. So if I was to draw a scale, a vertical scale, and said it's the consciousness scale, and we're starting halfway up that consciousness scale, we're all alive having this conversation here. So we're somewhere up the consciousness scale. When we start to go up to the next notch, one higher, more conscious, normally what has to happen is we have to actually drop down almost. It's like dropping down a notch to get more understanding for what it is we're trying to leave behind. Like you make a goal and try and leave behind, then you go through suffering. And they say in Buddhism, the first step to enlightenment is always suffering. Interesting that the word is always in there. In other words, enlightening keeps happening. But we basically have to go down a notch usually, or drop back to the reality of where we're vibrationally caught. So what is that grudge that I'm holding onto, or that past trauma that I've not been able to let go of? And no matter how positive or proactive I've been, I just haven't healed this wound from deep down where I've given up on humanity or given up on men or women or whatever it is. So often to move up to the next level, we have to go back down to where we think we no longer are and actually clear it at a real level. We have to open our heart. We have to clear that wound. We have to be available and open like the feminine, available and welcoming. You can come in now. And when we go down to that, what happens is we get the compassion and the empathy for everybody else that's actually had the same experience. So when you then travel upwards, and usually what happens is the universe presents you with an opportunity to be there for somebody else with that compassion and empathy, and that completes the cycle. It's like a triangle that's sliding up a scale. And that is, I want to go up here, but first I have to go down there and realize I'm still carrying a wound. I have to experience that wound and get someone to help me release it, or go through it, embody it, feel it fully and heal that one. Then universe offers, across the scale at the bottom of the triangle, somebody else for me to actually connect with and help. And they just turn up in the street and they tell you about the same problem. You go, oh, and you help them. And then you shift. So you've had the problem, you've cleared it, and you've helped someone else. So you're literally practicing mastery around a vibratory level of consciousness. But the crazy thing is that as you become more aware in the vertical element of that thing that I've just spoken about, you see things more clearly. You see how everyone's doing the same thing. But you see, you have compassion. You realize that the person who's stopping you is actually just going through something that you need to be there for. So rather than us becoming aloof and above, and we're like we're conscious beings and those unconscious beings are terrible and everything else, it's quite the opposite. It's literally like people giving, someone coming to you with their stuff or with their issues, or showing up on your life journey right in front of you. Some of your gifts that show up are just anything but a joy to be around. Some of the other gifts in our life journey are absolute pains in the ass. They struggle with you, they battle with you every step of the way until you finally get that they're showing you a part of your old reflection or your current reflection, or something you need to learn how to be there for. And as soon as you stop resisting that relationship and you move in and be with that person, the game drops away and they open up and let you in, and everything changes, which is, once again, the opening is via the sacred feminine, by us being there with love, understanding, acknowledgement for one other person. And it's usually that person that keeps popping up in our space. But that, so not only is the stuff there to wake us up, but also the people in the stuff. Because, I've just been on Fiji for a week, in Fiji, on an island in Fiji for a week. Came back and saw my beautiful chiropractor friend Keith today to get an adjustment. He's like, oh, you're out of whack. And he said, isn't that funny? You go over to an island paradise, but you still can't escape the stuff, because it's literally follows around everywhere. And really the biggest awakenings come from being there for the people in front of us, as opposed to, leaving it all behind. It's actually being there for it. So you transmute it once and for all.
Trevor, I can't imagine you and Joe hopping into bed at night and just rolling over and saying, night, night. What sort of conversations do you two have?
I'm picturing that straight away. They're all day conversations, so they happen all around the place. So I travel, and, she has a program called the Sacred Sister Project. So she goes into schools and works with teenage girls and their mums to honor that sacred feminine, that beautiful sacred element of the feminine that we have to bring into the world to heal the world, because that was the very thing that was squashed. And a bit of a side step, but I'll come back to Joe in a second, and bedtime. But many, many years ago, it was a very real thing that occurred on this planet, that all of the pagan, wonderful, sorcerous, supposedly witchy women were all actually burnt at the stake. And, the powers to be at the time felt that they needed to purge these women that were actually often just working with nature and the cycles and all this sort of stuff. And it was voodoo and witchcraft and everything else. And that whole area of spirituality and connectedness and sacred feminine was actually almost wiped out. It was certainly, a vibration was created that if you're going to start talking about this stuff, you better be ready, that you could be taken at any moment. Like it sort of sits still in our ether. So I think we're still coming through those phases for a beautiful, powerful woman to be able to speak up without becoming too masculine, and without having to, become like a man to speak up, but being able to speak up with their heart open and being, strong and powerful, but also open and loving. I think that's the ultimate achievement. And I know that's why men have to wake up, because we have to be brothers. We have to be partners and brothers and soul brothers to be able to say, all right, sisters, wake up and speak your truth, because you see stuff that not everybody sees, and you need to speak that. So when my wife, Joe, and I, go to bed of a night, it's very often when we're around together, because we're often in different states or whatever it may be. But it's very much about how was the day and how you going and how did you go with that, and I had a challenge with this and I had a challenge with that. And it's just being open to each other. There's no wound festers for very long in a conscious relationship, because everything gets spoken about and opened up, and you realise, she's my best friend. You know, she's literally, my kids are amazing. And, you know, even Jackie, my ex-partner, she's just a beautiful, amazing best friend as well. But Jo is like, she's just been through everything with me. And while I've been healing myself and occasionally messed up again, she's been there and she's forgiven me through so many layers and levels that, you know, she has a relationship with a relatively conscious man who loves her and adores her. And she's created that by standing by me while I worked out who I really was, you know. So it's quite fascinating that we have the opportunity, but we've got to stick with it, and we've got to bring the best parts out in each other. And ultimately the pot of gold is at the end of the rainbow.
You know, so many couples don't get the opportunity to have such conversations, and there could be a number of our listeners tuning into this podcast. Maybe their husbands or partners are in the car, and there's no accident that they've put this on for them to hear you. But what would you say? What would your advice be to a woman who has a beautiful husband or partner? They adore them, but they don't feel like they're quite open or fully expanded or even open to the possibility of a greater consciousness. Is it just to have patience, or what would your advice be to that person listening?
Oh, it's close to that, but maybe a little bit more powerful. I would say you are the most beautiful and incredible creator in your own right. You do not need your partner to travel the journey with you. You do not actually need anything, because you are a creator in your own right. When you can embrace that step by step more and more, they will have no choice but to come with you because the energy is so strong and powerful. And I think every relationship wakes up in a different order. Sometimes, a bit more rarely, the men wake up for the women. More often than not, the women wake up in this day and age before the men. There's no doubt about it that the women are closer to awakening than most men. And so often for the women, isn't that funny? It's so back to front, because on the planet, the men, and we know this is not true, but the men are espoused as having all the power, you know, and they're the leaders of the. No, it's not the case. In most cases, what the information and the intuition and the power that the women are sitting on is exactly what the world needs. But the crazy thing is, the challenge for the women is to forgive their men as well. They're actually big enough to be able to do it. The men aren't in most cases, big enough to forgive. You know, the women need to do the forgiving, because it's actually, they've got the power. Not forgiving for like a doormat, not forgiving like I'll let you get away with anything. Standing up for what they really want, but also knowing, you may not know right now as a man who you really are. You know, so I've got this wonderful analogy that just came to me in the middle of a session one day when I was trying to explain this to a man. And it was, you know, it was a conscious man waking up, and it's the bed sheet analogy. And that is, if we suspended a bed sheet and looked at this bed sheet, it looks like one big sheet. But if you look at it really closely, it's a whole lot of cotton fibers wound together to create this incredible bed sheet. And they're all wound so tight that it looks like one piece of fabric. So literally the bed sheet is like our life. And we are one of those fibers that runs right through the middle of that bed sheet. And when we can actually grab that bed sheet in the center with our fingers and grab it and lift up the center of the bed sheet, what happens is the whole bed sheet starts to come up from the center outwards. Even if it's tucked into the edge of the bed, if you pull it hard enough for long enough, it untucks itself and it starts to come out. But the moment you grab it and start to lift it up, the closest fibers to you begin to lift as well. So our life is a lot like that, because your family, your husband, you know, your wife, whoever's listening to this, your kids, your immediate community, they're like all those pieces of cotton in your bedsheet. The only thing you really have to do to make sure you continue is make sure that you have the team around you to keep lifting up the center of your bedsheet, because no matter what happens, occasionally it's going to be tucked in tight and you're going to pull it and your fingers are going to slip off and you have to grab it again and again and again. Sometimes it's so tight you can hardly even grab it, but you just need to keep lifting, and the further it comes up, they will follow you up. We are all co-creators, and if we can actually understand and go through the practice of understanding who we are and what is this thought in my head and where does that come from, and does that really feel like me, and it feels revengeful or it feels angry or it feels depressed. Nothing that feels negative and takes us down is actually the truth of who we are. The old saying, know the truth and the truth shall set you free. Any thought that doesn't actually bring you up tone in energy is not actually the truth. I can't do it is not actually the truth if it actually makes you go down. So all we really have to do is keep challenging ourselves, whether we're male or female, and say, no, I have everything I need inside of me. And if I keep clearing myself and reach out to the right people, everything else I need will show up, either further inside of me or through other people that might show up. And away you go. But ultimately, the right people will follow you along the journey. I know there is a tricky thing for some people, that they will go through a stage where they may leave behind a relationship, or they may leave behind some friendships. I always prefer to look at it that the relationship will change form, because if you keep going, you will always cycle back and pick up that person at some stage, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, energetically, physically. But you have to be willing to go without anyone else going with you and continue that journey. And when you are, you'll find the other people that are willing to do the same, and almost a new little family or community gathers around you, and you get some strength from that community. Ultimately, but though, you don't want to be leaning on that community and using that community to make everybody else wrong, because that's when it goes astray as well. But it's using the connection with other like-minded people to keep clearing yourself, to realize you are a conscious co-creator. And when you can forgive somebody else, they will follow you.
And I guess it's a case of just accepting too that I love the way Dr. Brian Weiss talks about this, and that sometimes it's time for the souls to take different classes.
Yes.
In other words, sometimes that journey with that person in this life has come to an end, and that's okay. So it's not, like you say, about blaming. Can you tell me, as a dad, what this consciousness has done for you as a parent, and where would you like to think your children will take this information?
Really good question. And on that last little bit, I think when you're conscious, because there's an element of sadness or heart hurting when you do have to leave somebody behind, or you do have to take different classes. It's just part of the process of opening and continuing, and ultimately it all works itself out. But if you're not feeling anything when you do it, it's normally a sign that you're hiding something. Oh, bugger, I'm leaving that person behind. But when the heart and compassion goes out to the person, even if they've been nasty and negative, you're on the right track, because you're healing along the way.
Nice.
But my kids, I have 4 beautiful children. Christelle is 30 child, Jackie and I had Chrissy when I was 19, when she was 18. And then TJ is 23. Bailey is 20 and Charlie is 15. So all sorts of different ages, girl, boy, boy, girl. So I feel like I was softened up to start with, toughened up in the middle, and then softened up at the finish. But my 2 boys are so sensitive. They're so beautiful and sensitive, and they're so connected. I suppose the more conscious I became, or the more aware I became, the more I realized there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And the more I realized that some people could see things that I couldn't see. And I certainly knew that my kids were trying to tell me things that they could see from their perspective that I couldn't see. So progressively from child to child, that I realised, and Charlie's probably can thank the other 3, because we finally awoken for her. But I realised that they can have all their own answers, and they can see everything. So the whole time, when they want to talk to us about something, we say, what is it? What do you see? How do you see it? What do you feel? And I'm not just saying that to process it. I'm honestly wanting to know, what do you think about that? And so now, from 15 to 30 years old, those 4 children, they have done since Charlie was 2 years of age. We have adult conversations, have done all that whole time from when they were 15 to 0, adult conversations constantly the whole time. Not about adult things that they don't need to know about or need to be talking about, but just, what do you think's going on? So we'll leave a family dinner, or we'll leave a function somewhere, and then Charlie, my 15-year-old, she's been doing this for years, will get in the car and then give us a debrief of what she felt was going on in the room. Dad, I thought there was this so-and-so, and this was this person, but then that person came up and said this, and that really helped the situation, and so-and-so's really hanging on to something, So they've all become quite conscious and aware in their own right. They've all made some mistakes, and they're all on their own journey. They're all very different. They've all got different passions. One is a young businesswoman. One is a budding young Ironman. One is first, open professional race last year and only been doing it for a few years after avoiding it at all costs. One's an actor, and the other one, Charlie, the youngest one, is working herself out. And the other day she came home and said, I think I might like to study xenoarchaeology. There's only one university in the world that does it. It's in Scotland, and it's actually about ancient artifacts from other planets that are actually on this planet. And I think it'd be fascinating. And for the first time, I saw her feel really engaged about studying something. I'm like, wow, pursue that, honey, even if it leads you to something else, because you look so, you look so bright when you talk about it. But one of the things that I say to them all the time, and that they certainly seem to be doing, is that in life, when you're positive and proactive and you've got a passion and you're following it, there's a temptation to want to be so good at that you're the best, be so good at it that you maybe even better than everybody else, and that you dominate it and you win at it. And I say to them all the time, winning in that way doesn't lead to anything. It's actually not about domination. It's about shining. It's about pursuing what you do to the point where it shines and shines for others, not where you win and you've claimed all the prizes and you own it all for yourself. So they all seem to be demonstrating that at this moment, even though they're all struggling at different times and go through challenges. But we sit around the dinner table every single birthday. The whole extended family comes together, and the person it's birthday, everybody else, a funny story about me with you and what I really love about you. And we go around the whole table. It'll take a couple of hours. And every birthday in our family, it's my mum, my sister, my dad, my kids, whoever it is, my little nephews, we take the time to actually celebrate their arrival every single year and who they really are. And that invariably takes a couple of hours, and everyone cries their eyes out, laughs their head off and everything else. But then throughout the year, we have dinner table discussions. Every time we can, we sit down and say, well, we just, and the kids will start it. They'll say, I think it's time we had a conversation about what was the 2 best things that happened to you today. Or if everyone's a bit grumpy, it's like, okay, who wants to get off there? Everyone's got to get off their chest one thing that's really pissed them off in the last couple of weeks, So I just think it's about being a family and sharing and being conscious and everything else. And the kids end up being leaders in their community themselves, and they trust their own intuition. They trust their own. We've taught them to actually believe in themselves. Don't believe in me, believe in you. And slowly but surely, it seems to be having them grow up to be 4 amazing young humans.
Well, that was an amazing answer, Miss Kimmy. For a very good question. Yeah, it was excellent. So where to from here? Trevor?
Yes.
Where to from here? Like, you just sound like you have just created a phenomenal life purpose. And for many athletes, they find themselves very lost after their heydays. And it just sounds like after your heyday, you just went from strength to strength. So turning 50, where to from here?
Look, thanks. Good question. I'm so moved by what I feel every single day. So I'm meeting these incredible people, and I'm traveling the world, and I'm humbled every day by the people I meet and what I'm discovering and what they're discovering and sharing with me. And I think that, that law of attraction happens when you really embrace your purpose and follow your bliss. In Sir Joseph Campbell's words, you literally, you find what you're looking for constantly. You always find what you're looking for, but it's much more joyous when you're following your bliss. You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need, But, Life Changer Foundation, trying to create a societal shift. That's a big body of work that I'm working on at the moment, working from community to community and coming to a place near you. I'm president of Surfers Paradise Surf Lifesaving Club, which was the club I grew up with from an 8-year, that I shared a little bit at the start, and I'm trying to give back to that community. And that has been really, really challenging, because that's like trying to take your own family through a personal development seminar, because I'm trying to help shift culture and shift an awakening through a club of people, several hundred members that turn up for all sorts of different reasons. And they literally come along just for some fun or some lightness, or some of them are avoiding family issues at home, or they're avoiding a broken this or a broken that. And some of their baggage follows them in the door. So they do a wonderful job, but they also start to actually act the same way they do back in the negative relationship they just come from. So it's an incredible experience of being a volunteer in an organization, helping make a shift but I can't make anyone change, you know. I'm literally got to listen and understand and be patient and everything. And it's almost like doing penance for almost all the things that I went through those years where I felt like I was on top of the world, but really I was dominating and I was sucking some of the oxygen, you know. So I'm really actually, that's kind of been healing me a lot. It's been very challenging and healing me a lot. Ultimately, the Bootcamp for the Soul program that I have online, which is just, you know, soulbootcamp.trevorhendy.com. It's 12 weeks of emails that come in 6 days a week, morning and night. You can go onto your own page on the website and do the processes and follow through. I get amazing, I've never advertised it or promoted it. I get amazing feedback and testimonials from it. I don't want to make it into a big thing. I just want to make it for people that are ready for it. But everybody who does it is blown away and gets a life change out of it, quite a life shift. And I had a lady just email me today. She's just done it for the second time and said, I can't believe I got as much out of it as I did the first time. You know, so that's a really cool thing that I like to, while I've been building Life Changer in the last 18 months, I haven't updated my website. I haven't put videos on. I haven't put anything on YouTube and anything else because I love to share messages and things that I'm learning. But they haven't been out there because I've literally been putting this other stuff into the community. But the final piece is I'm traveling the world with my family. We had a goal we set 5 years ago to travel the world as a family, helping people. And literally I just got invited to, you know, LA last week to actually go and do some work with some major organizations over there. And I've done some work in LA and New York before. I do wellness weeks and stuff over in Fiji. I take ocean swim weeks out on Lord Howe Island, which is the best week of your life out there. No mobile phones. You know, just really trying to live a life of demonstration of who we are, what we're capable of, but also help other people to connect with that little spark in them and to follow that all the way through. And I just feel like the awakening that's supposed to be happening on the planet is happening through each and every one of us at whatever pace it's happening. And it's just our job to actually to put it into play and to be honest and vulnerable along the way and fail when we need to fail, but ultimately to play our part in creating a shift and becoming more conscious co-creators.
I just want you talked about you can't change anybody. I want you to know that you are the example of change and people will follow with that example of change. So, Trevor, I want to thank you for that you have become conscious and all that you are doing. I have been, we do have a little feed where we have a little bit of a conversation, and Kimmy would like everybody to know that she was with you at Pete Evans' wedding.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Don't mind to name drop.
No.
Go for it, Kim. Go for it.
I think Trevor and I actually had a little moment, thank you, as we walked to see the bees.
Nice.
We actually had a very little teary moment as the beautiful Nick came up the aisle, didn't we, Trev?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a most beautiful day for one of our beloved souls in this country in particular, who's spoken his truth and a lot of our truth and absolutely copped it, you know, and to be there for him in a very, very intimate little setting, you know, Joe, myself, Kim, etc. There weren't many other people there. In fact, there was only us at the very ceremony, wasn't there? Yeah. But because it literally, this is a man, Pete Evans, that I just love and adore. He's absolutely a brother to me. But just to know that there's people out there living their truth, and it's really challenging sometimes to live your truth. Some people, the truth they have to tell is not a truth that other people want to hear. And, you know, there's all layers to it, and we can debate it and all those sort of things. But talk about an incredibly beautiful change agent, and for me to be his best man and to be there for him in that moment, to take that step. I love him and adore him. And yes, Kim and I, we've both felt the gravity of that moment, didn't we?
That was precious. Thank you, darling.
And
by the way, you did a wonderful job too. You're incredible on the day.
Say that again. No, I'm only kidding. It was beautiful. It was such an honour, and it was such a treat to be there together. And I think on behalf of the three of us, we had Pete on the show just a couple of weeks ago, and you will love what he had to say. I think you both have been incredible men and beautiful change agents together, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of us as well.
No, thank you. Much appreciated. couldn't we talk about like this sort of stuff all day and every day? And don't you just want to get stadiums full of people and everybody talk? Like it's just wake up. We just need to wake up because all the love and everything we need is inside of us. And it's such an incredible feeling to feel it sitting there, but also to feel a lot of the pain that people are going through because it's squashed behind so many things. So I think it's up to us to keep going and friendships like even the four of us on this conversation, it changes the world, and I'm incredibly grateful.
Love you, Trevor.
You're beautiful.
Love you girls too. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of today's show, Trevor. You've been absolutely enlightening, enlivening, and inspiring. And for all of our listeners, get as many people as you possibly can in your world to listen to this podcast, because this is one of those podcasts where, we've kind of gone beyond the women sitting around having a chat, that we sometimes get feedback from our guys saying it gets too much. And this is one of those podcasts where I don't believe that's too much. I think it's just right. So thank you, Trevor, for being a part of that and really supporting Up for a Chat in changing the world and creating a ripple effect. So thank you.
Good to be with you again too, Karen. And, yeah, fantastic.
So for all of our listeners, if you are interested in following Trevor and knowing more about his boot camp for the soul, like I promised you, we would let you know. Their website again, Trev? soulbootcamp.trevorhendy.com. Done. And now if you guys forget that link, it's going to be in the show notes. So you can get hold of this show and all of the details about this show at allthews.facebook.com/up for a chat. And you can also get all of the show notes at allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up for a chat. And you can find all the details there in case you're on the run listening to this podcast. When you get back home, make sure that you check online and go and check out Trevor for yourself and for your family. So hopefully you guys have loved today's podcast as much as we have enjoyed bringing it to you. And we are going to look so forward to talking with you guys next week right here on Up for a Chat, when we get to become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. And we're going to see you on the ride. Bye for now, everybody.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.